Welcome to Earthtide Studios. I'm Zach Knight, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at how to edit drums in a modern production. We're going to be using Cubase today. That's my DAW of choice, but you can do this in any DAW. We're going to be doing it with slip editing as well, which is super straightforward, and it's actually not nearly as daunting as people think. I have a couple other ways that I do drum editing as well, and I'll show you that in some future videos. Also, don't forget, we have a free vocal production course available, which teaches you how to record, edit, and mix your vocals for modern productions. It's available for free now. Just click the link below and it's yours. But we're not here to talk vocals. Let's get into those drums.
So we're in Cubase and we've got some drums to edit. They're all nice and color-coded and looking good. We're actually working with the song Therapy by Color and Shade. These drums, funnily enough, are actually the ones for the intro for the channel. And I thought, hey, people might, be interested to see what they sound like. Let's have a look at what we've got here. So these are all just the raw tracks, and you can see here that we've got a number of different mics that have been used. We went for 2 on the kick, 3 on the snare. There's 3 toms as well, hats, ride, 2 overhead microphones. We did a stereo pair in the room, and we also did a mono pair in the room as well. Down the line, I'm going to do a tutorial showing how I would record a drum session like this, the microphones used, and all of that. But for now, we're just going to look at editing them. So let's have a listen and see what they sound like. So as you can hear, the drums sound pretty awesome straight away. That definitely is a testament to how they were played. The drummer Graham is a really good drummer as well. And as you can see, it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, technically these are the same, but 4 different takes that have been used to make up this section. So I am a big fan of making sure that you try and include as much of a section as possible in drums because it really makes it very fluid. Piecing things together from smaller parts definitely sounds far more mechanical, and it just leaves a lot of room available for error, unfortunately. So let's have a look at how we've got the drums laid out in the session here. We've got 15 mono tracks of the drums, which are running into this drum bus here. Now, I've just got a limiter on it just because I want to make sure that I'm not clipping the output of Cubase. That doesn't necessarily mean this limiter is going to stay when I'm doing the exporting of the edited drums, but it's just now here for ease of use. All the drums are being sent to this bus, and all of the drums are actually sitting in this bus, and all the tracks are sitting inside this folder in Cubase. And this drum bus is then being sent to the stereo out, and because it's already got a limiter on it already, it's fine. Nothing's going to be clipping that. So the thing that really is awesome about Cubase is you have this ability called group editing, and you can utilize it inside folders. Normally when you're editing drums, if you're not using Cubase, you usually have to group all of the individual tracks. But because we're putting them inside a folder and utilizing group editing, we don't have to actually group the individual tracks. I'll show you how. So if I click on this track here, the kick in, all of these tracks inside this folder are automatically selected because I have group editing on, which is symbolized here by this orange little equals sign here. Now, I actually have it macroed in my Cubase session where I can press Shift E and it will turn group editing off and on. This is a thing that you can adjust in your edit and key commands here. This is really useful because it basically means that at any point in time while I'm editing, I can literally click on a track and it gets the whole folder selected. Then I can turn group editing off, and then all of a sudden I can click on one track, move that track around, and then go back to group editing, and then all of these others are accessible, but this one here is different if I want to change that track. You don't have to, but obviously there's lots of reasons why you would do that. So the next thing for us to look at is phase, and this is probably one of the most crucial things when it comes to making sure that your drums are edited really well. And Frankly, it is something that is mostly taken care of in the engineering side of things, but part of your job when you're editing drums is to check phase and make sure that it's good. So we're just having a look here at the close mics first. As you can see, generally speaking, we mostly have things in phase here. Specifically, we're going to look at the kick in and the kick out. And what you can see is from here to here, we've got one cycle of that first kick. I'll just make it a little bit smaller so we can see. And this kick here isn't in phase with the other one. Now, there's various reasons why this can happen, but realistically, it's most likely because the distance between this kick and the microphone to this kick and the microphone was different, and so the difference between those two was the difference that you can see here. So what I've done is I've turned group editing off, and I'm just going to put this one in phase. Generally, you want to either have the start of the waveform or the first cycle to be sitting at around the same point. So I'm just going to hold control and grab this one here and just bring it now. And as you can see there, that is now sitting in phase. We'll just have a look over here. It's hard to see because there's not that much information in a kick. On here, we'll go over the next one. Make a few adjustments here. There we go. All right. So yeah, you want to have these wave cycles here sitting in together and hitting at the same time. And the most important thing is that you want to make sure that when you've got a large amount of audio signal coming from a source that's doing the same, working on the same thing, you just want to be making sure that you've got a cycle that's going up at the same time that another cycle is going up or mostly going up. You don't want one going up and one going down at the same time, because what that's doing is it's basically trying to make whatever speaker is pushing that audio down, push out and in at the same time. And so therefore it's going to make the audio sound, be not as powerful. And so therefore that's why you want the phase to be good. Moving on, we'll have a look at the snare. Now, these two snare top microphones here, you can see are in phase with each other, and the snare bottom microphone is not in phase. Now, let's find a snare over here, specifically. So this is the snare, and you can see this snare bottom is not quite in phase with the other two. So what we're going to do is there's two different ways that you can go about this. Number one is you can do it manually, or number two, you can use a plugin called Auto Align. A lot of the time I will do a combination of both, but for now I'm just going to show you manually. We're going to be looking at where the cycle goes in this particular one on the snare. We'll just make it a bit different, a bit smaller so we can see that waveform there. And we'll look at so we've got the first cycle here. And I'm just going to bring this over there. Okay, and then it seems to be even there and even there, and now that is in phase. Now, the reason why this snare bottom is in phase right now in this waveform is because when I was recording this snare, I flipped the phase on the input of the preamp for the snare bottom, because you want to make sure, because it will be actually recording at a different wavelength, as basically the waveform of the audio waveform for that snare bottom would be the opposite, because of where the two microphones are and where the bottom is. So you want to flip the bottom one to make it match the top two when you're doing the recording. Then after that, you just want to make sure that the toms are in phase as well. And you also want to make sure that the overheads and the rooms are as well. Usually I would have to use Auto Align if I really wanted to get those sitting just right. But generally speaking, what I would do for all the overhead and room information is do the editing of the session. And then after that, I would do the phase adjustments with auto align afterwards. It's more specifically with the kicks and the snares if they need manually adjusting before editing. That's why I would do it. So now that the phase has been checked, we can move on to actually doing the editing. And specifically, I'm going to be doing slip editing in Cubase. It's my favorite way of editing. It's super fast. It's generally speaking super easy. You can also do quantizing, and that's definitely something that's done quite often in other DAWs. I'm not a fan of it because I don't really like gridding drums. I don't think it sounds very natural. And this is definitely a way to be able to keep minor differences between even every single hit that will make the performance sound far more realistic and fuller as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this kick drum here, and I'll specifically show you how slip editing works. So if I wanted to move this kick drum and move it within the waveform, which is what slip editing is, I'd be holding Control and Alt on the keyboard and then just sliding left and right until it was sitting right where I wanted it. Now, with a kick, you can either have it where it's sort of sitting just about where that main part of the middle of the first cycle is sitting on the grid, or you can have it just sitting just behind it. That's where I like to keep them generally. You can even push it back a little bit further. I mean, we are looking at 1/32 in this whole gap here, and that tiny difference there of it being a little bit behind the beat is super minor. But if the song has a bit more groove in it, you might even be putting the kick back even to here. In this case, I'll keep it there. Now, we're wanting to go over here and have a look at the next two hits, which are these two kicks here and this snare here. I can see that these aren't in time. Well, this one is in time, but this one isn't in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here, as you can see, and I held in Alt, and I clicked and it cut it. And I'm going to do it again here for this one and over here. Now, this snare is out of time, so I'm going to bring that over here and put it in time and match up that transient there to the grid. This kick, on the other hand, is out of time. Bring that one over there. But the problem we've got now is we've got this kick is in time with this symbol here, but this is sitting out of time. Well, this is causing a bit of spill over there. So what I want to do is actually want to drag that one over. And now it will cover that up. Now, you would think, okay, well, that's fine, but what about crossfades? And what about, you know, causing ripping issues that are going on there with the audio? Well, it's lucky. We're in Cubase. We go to Project, Auto Fades, Crossfades. Make sure you select Auto Fades In, Auto Fade Out, Auto Crossfades. Select the millisecond length that you want. I like to do 7 to 10 milliseconds for drum editing, and make sure you select equal power. And now it's already got automatic crossfades in there. Sometimes you still have to do manually crossfading in drum editing in Cubase, but in this case, we don't need to. Okay, moving on. Now we can have a look here, and you can see that there were some hats, and these hats here are in time, and these hats are a little bit late. Sorry, a little bit early. So we're going to bring that back there, that there, that there, and so on. And we'll put those hats in time, and then we'll put that snare in time, and voila. It's in time. As you can see, that was super quick. And that was just, I mean, to be fair, it was a very small section, but now we have some hats that are really super in time. However, you can see I've left this one here. And the reason I've left that one there is because if I move that, you'll get this weird sound in the snare. It's basically pulling on the end of the snare. Don't really want to have that sound. So this difference here for that hat being a little bit ahead of the beat, it kind of feels a little bit natural anyway, so I just keep that in. So now that you've got the basics of slip editing down, we need to look at what happens when somebody hits a kick early or late compared to the rest of the kit. Specifically, you can see here that we have these overheads have been hit in time with the grid, and this kick is late. Now, there's two ways we can go about fixing this. The way I'm going to do it, I would normally do it for this section, is to just select that particular whole section of the hit there on the kick and turn grip editing off, and then grab the two kicks, and then I would slide them over, put them in time, and those kicks will be in time with the rest of it. Yes, the kick information in the overheads and in the room microphones will be different, but when you're mixing, most of the time, you're going to be getting rid of a lot of that low-end information from the overheads and from the room microphones as well. So you're not actually going to hear the kick in those microphones anyway, and the close mic is going to be almost all of the sound that you hear. So let's have a listen to how it sounds now. In time, and sounds great. However, if you had, say for instance, you moved the kick and you just couldn't get it to sound good with that kick performance from that one, this is the part where you would take a sample. So if you have time when you are recording drums, you want to make sure, or if you're editing for somebody and they've done this, you want to try and see if samples of the kit can be taken. Specifically after you've got everything all set up, all tuned, and sounding good through the, through the studio. So have a listen here. I have some samples that I've made of the drum kit, which I took at the time of recording at the very start of the day. So specifically, if we have an issue with a kick drum or a snare or a tom, etc., you just grab the microphones relating to it, make sure that they're in phase, copy them, and then you want to go over to the section where you were adjusting the specific kick drum. And say, for instance, this particular kick was no good. You would just click on the area that you want. Make sure you've got the track selected, paste, bring it over. Make sure you make sure you let it sit in a specific spot where it covers over with the audio waveform. You really don't want to be leaving like tiny little gaps like this, because as much as you've got auto crossfades, you don't want to leave the gaps to be too small of audio waveforms. And now, sounds fantastic. The reason this works is because it's exactly the same kit, tuned the same way, recorded with the same microphone, set up in the same room. It's not going to work unless you only take samples from that recording session. You can do the same with snares, you can do the same with toms. So now that your drums are all edited and in phase, the next thing to do is to consolidate them. So what I do in Cubase is I'll select all of the tracks for the song, and I have it hotkeyed, but you can go to audio and then bounce selection, and then it'll ask if you want to replace the events. You want to say yes. Obviously, you want to make sure you had your auto fades on, so that it'll do all the crossfades for you. I would play back and check beforehand as well. Give it a bit of time. It takes a bit to render through. There's a lot of edits in this session. And now you can see all these drums are all just put together and nice and edited. So that's how you get it all consolidated. After that, we will look at the next thing, which is removing extra audio from the tom tracks. So when we're dealing with getting rid of that extra audio in the tom tracks, specifically we're dealing only with the tom close mics. So in this case, there are 3 close mics for the toms. So we got here tom 1, tom 2, and tom 3. So what you want to do for this part is you actually only just want to be listening to those tracks and nothing else. So make sure you solo them and have a listen. And you want to be hearing for every single time the tom is hit. It's usually quite obvious from the waveform, but it's worth checking just a few times. So you can see here we've got a floor tom hit here and then some rack tom and floor tom here. So what you're doing with this is you're removing all of this extra information inside these tracks that is not toms. I've just brought the waveform up a bit higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut here, because this is the only information of that tom there, and bring this over to the start of the next tom hit. And then I'm going to bring this back over to here. Ideally, what you want to be doing with these is you want to be not having any cymbal sound in the toms, because it means that you're going to be able to EQ and process those toms and try to keep them as natural as possible. So I'm actually going to get it here. So I get rid of this cymbal hit there, and then I'm going to take it from the start of the tom there, cut, delete that other information, and then we just have this. Sounds great. Now, there is going to be a few different things that we'll do as well, but generally speaking, you want to make sure you do that, and you do that across the whole song. So I'll show you just quickly how we would do it for some of these other ones here. You can see that is 2 toms there, and then the next tom hit is here, and then the next cymbal hit is there. So we're going to bring that one down to there and cut there. We'll be getting rid of up to here and bringing that down, deleting those 2 because there's no toms there. And now this is a part where we check. That is a cymbal hit there. So we're going to get rid of that. And so now we have this. Sounds fantastic, right? So what you want to do is you basically want to go through and cut out all of the extra audio across the whole song. And then once you've done that, just to make sure that you take care of having these waveforms nice and smooth, is you just, at the very end of each of them, you just do like a tiny fade out, a tiny fade in. And then you get, with the whole kit, so as you can see, sounds great. And the room sounds and the overhead sounds are going to be what helps you bring out the tail of those drums. If you really, really have an issue with like a drum being super short, you could specifically take that actual floor tom there. You could go into the samples that we took of the session. I believe I have one right here. Take this tom, bring this tom over here, and then bring it over there, and then replace that tom. You just need to make sure you match up the wave files. Really important. And then bring that in there. And then you don't have to actually worry about dealing with the tail of that tom, because this, I mean, that's not even a tom hit under there, but you can bring it there. Just fade it a bit. And now you've got another tom hit, which you could use instead. After you've done all of that and you've edited, you've cut out all of that extra noise there for the toms, you've done the little fade out, done the little fade in, you just want to select all of those toms and do bounce selection on all of them as well. And then that means you're going to be able to have all of the toms sitting together, stripped in the session. So now that your drums are edited and the toms have had all of that extra information removed, it's time to bounce these drums. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you have the start and the end point of your song known. And I usually like to put a marker there to signify it. I happen to know that this song goes for the full length of this waveform here. So then you just select it, press P, and it will put a locator at the very start and the end of the area you want to bounce. I have the bounce function macroed, but what you can do is you can just go to File, Export, Audio Mixdown, and then after that you want to select multiple channels. Now, the important thing to note with this is that if you have any panning set on any of the channels when you editing for playback reasons, etc., you want to remove all of that and make sure that they're all mono, and that way you can bounce them all as mono tracks. If you, for instance, wanted to bounce the room mics as a stereo track, you could do that, but you just need to make sure that you pan those left and right, and then you want to just export those 2 tracks only on their own. But in this case, we're going to export it all as mono. The other thing you need to do as well is you need to make sure that every single track is all sitting at 0 dB. You might turn some things down or turn some things up during your editing process, but in this particular case, when you're exporting, you want everything to be at 0 dB, so it's the same volume as it was when you recorded it. The next thing after that is you go multiple channels, and then here you can actually choose what type of way you want to export it. You want to be doing a WAV file. Make sure your sample rate is what it was recorded at. So in this case, this session was recorded at 44.1K. So we want to be doing that. Keep it 24-bit. And then after that, go through and select all of the tracks that you're actually exporting. Just right here. And then, now I'm not going to export this room stereo mic. That was a bounce of the stereo room mics that I made stereo. And then after that, you just want to make sure that you select mono down mix. If you are bouncing them all as mono, don't select that if you're exporting them as stereo. Name them appropriately, and then just click perform export, and that's it. You've exported your drums.
So there you have it. Now you are primed and ready to be able to edit drums for your songs or any client work that you're doing and get it sounding really nice and tight for a modern production. It's really not that hard, as you can see, and it's not nearly as daunting a task as people make it out to be. So I'm very happy to be able to share this information, and there's a lot more tips that I can as well. All you need to do is just let me know what you want to hear, throw a comment in below, or just hit me up via social media or the website. Don't forget about that free vocal production course, and also let me know if there's any other courses that you would like me to create. But for now, take it easy.